Mark had always been obsessed with the idea of a zombie apocalypse. He spent hours every day training for the inevitable outbreak, stocking up on supplies, and reading up on survival techniques. His friends and family had always thought he was a little crazy, but Mark knew that he was simply being prepared for the worst-case scenario. Late one night, Mark found himself at a Walmart store with a group of survivors. They had all come to stock up on supplies and fortify their homes against the undead. Mark surveyed his surroundings, taking note of the exits and the layout of the store. He was determined to make it out alive, no matter what. As Mark made his way through the aisles of the store, he took note of the other survivors. There was a young couple with a baby, a middle-aged man with a limp, and a teenage girl with a baseball bat. Mark knew that he would have to work with these people if they were going to survive the apocalypse. The group began to gather supplies, loading their carts with food, water, and medical supplies. Mark made sure to grab extra weapons and ammunition, knowing that they would need them to fend off the zombies. As the group worked, they talked and joked, trying to keep the mood light despite the danger that surrounded them. Mark knew that they were running out of time. The zombies could be anywhere, and they needed to get out of the store before it was too late. He took charge, rallying the survivors and directing them towards the exits. They moved quickly, their carts full of supplies, their hearts racing with fear. As they approached the exit, Mark could feel his heart pounding in his chest. He knew that they were in for a fight, but he was ready. He had prepared for this moment his entire life. As the group stepped outside into the dark of night, they braced themselves for the horror that awaited them. As soon as the group stepped outside of the Walmart, they were met with a harsh reality. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and the darkness was broken only by the flickering lights of a nearby gas station. Mark scanned the area, searching for any signs of the undead. Suddenly, a loud moan shattered the silence. Mark grabbed his weapon and motioned for the others to follow him. They crept forward, moving towards the sound. As they rounded a corner, they were confronted with their first zombie. The creature was shuffling towards them, its eyes vacant and its skin gray and rotting. Mark took aim and fired, taking the zombie down with a single shot. The group breathed a sigh of relief, but they knew that there were more out there. As they moved through the deserted streets, they encountered more and more zombies. The creatures were relentless, and the group had to fight tooth and nail to stay alive. Mark led the charge, his years of training paying off as he took down zombie after zombie. The others looked to him for guidance, following his lead as they fought their way through the horde. Despite the danger that surrounded them, Mark felt alive. This was what he had prepared for, what he had trained for. He was finally living his dream of hunting zombies. As they continued to fight, the group came across a small group of survivors. The newcomers were armed and ready to fight, and Mark knew that they needed to band together if they were going to make it out alive. Together, they pressed on through the streets, fighting off the undead and searching for a safe place to rest. The group pressed forward, determined to find a safe place to rest. They had been on the move for hours, fighting off hordes of zombies as they went. Mark's heart was pounding in his chest, but he refused to let his fear show. He had to be strong for the others. As they approached a large abandoned building, Mark signaled for everyone to halt. He surveyed the area, looking for any signs of danger. After a few tense moments, he motioned for the group to follow him as he cautiously led them towards the building. The door was locked, but Mark managed to pick the lock with ease. The group slipped inside, and Mark quickly secured the entrance. They were in a large warehouse, and Mark could see that it had once been used to store supplies. They set up a perimeter, using the crates and boxes to create a makeshift barricade. Mark knew that they needed to rest and regroup if they were going to make it out of this alive. As they settled in, Mark took stock of their supplies. They had some food and water, but it wouldn't last long. He knew that they would need to venture out and scavenge for more. He gathered the group together and assigned roles. They would split up into two groups, with one group staying behind to guard the warehouse, while the other group went out to scavenge. Mark would lead one group, and the new survivors would lead the other. The group set out, moving through the abandoned city in search of supplies. They encountered more zombies, but Mark and the others were prepared. They fought with everything they had, taking down the undead with ruthless efficiency. After hours of searching, they returned to the warehouse with a haul of supplies. Mark knew that they couldn't stay in one place for too long, but for now, they were safe. As they settled in for the night, Mark allowed himself a moment of relief. They had survived another day. The next morning, Mark woke up to chaos. He heard shouting and gunshots coming from outside the warehouse. He quickly got dressed and grabbed his weapons, calling out to the others to do the same. As they rushed outside, they were greeted by a terrifying sight. A group of zombies had broken through their barricades and were attacking the warehouse. Mark knew they had to act fast. He split the group up, assigning them to different positions to take down the approaching zombies. Mark took the front line, firing his shotgun at the undead as they approached. The battle was intense and brutal, with zombies swarming them from all sides. Mark and the others fought with everything they had, their determination to survive driving them forward. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, Mark heard the sound of an engine in the distance. He turned to see a truck barreling towards them, its driver running down zombies as it went. The truck crashed through the barricades and pulled up next to them, the driver shouting at them to get in. Mark didn't hesitate, motioning for the others to follow him as they scrambled into the back of the truck. As they sped away from the warehouse, Mark couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. They had survived another attack, but he knew that they couldn't let their guard down. The zombie apocalypse was far from over, and they had to keep fighting to stay alive. He turned to the driver, thanking him for saving their lives. The man introduced himself as Jack, a fellow survivor who had been on the road for months. Mark felt a sense of camaraderie with the man, knowing that they were both fighting the same fight. They continued on, their future uncertain, but their determination to survive stronger than ever. Days passed as Mark and his group traveled with Jack in his truck, searching for a safe place to call home. They encountered countless obstacles along the way, from swarms of zombies to rival survivor groups who were just as desperate to survive. Despite the dangers, Mark felt a sense of hope growing within him. He had found a sense of purpose in this new world, and he was determined to keep fighting to protect himself and his new companions. One day, Jack told them about a potential safe haven he had heard about from other survivors. It was a fortified community in the mountains, with walls high enough to keep the zombies out and enough resources to sustain a small group. Mark and the others were skeptical at first, having heard of similar communities that had turned out to be traps or overrun by the undead. But Jack seemed convinced, and he offered to take them there. The journey was long and treacherous, but they finally arrived at the community. Mark couldn't believe his eyes as he saw the walls stretching high into the sky, with guards patrolling the perimeter armed with weapons. As they approached the gates, they were greeted by a group of survivors who seemed friendly enough. Mark and the others were taken inside and shown around, amazed at the resources and sense of community they found. For the first time since the apocalypse, Mark felt a sense of safety and belonging. He knew that there were still dangers out there, but for now, He was content to stay and rebuild his life within the walls of the community. As he settled into his new home, Mark couldn't help but think back on the journey that had led him here. He had survived against all odds, and he knew that he had the strength and determination to keep fighting for his survival in this new world.